Welcome everyone to the Self Improvement Podcast, where we share self help principles, ideas, and lessons to help adolescents navigate through life better with more passion and success. This is your host, Ian.
Joined with him today is Dalton, and we have a special guest with us as well. Alex, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here. My name is Alex Julca. I work at the United Nations for 22 years in New York City, but I'm taking advantage of working from home since my kids live here in Keene. It's a nice community, nice environment, good air, water. So I do my work much more smoothly here, in spite of New York City also has its beauties, but I feel much at this stage much round up here working. Yeah.
I also want to say thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate your time and being here with us because I know you have a lot of life experience and different perspectives, right? Because like me, I grew up in a third world country in the Middle East, specifically Syria, and I got to see that side of the world and then come here, complete my high school diploma, and now investing in myself and learning different things. Um, but what has like your education journey, what did it look like? And what are some things that if you were able to change, you would go back in time and change, if that were a possibility?
Yeah. Well, the first part of your question is I I realize it's a long road, but not only long, but also um, very um treacherous sometimes. Because sometimes you have to I had to do routes that I was didn't want to follow the routes. When I finished at 21 years old my college in Peru,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find a job for 2 years, and I had to study business, my MBA in Peru, only because that assures you 100% you're going to get a good job, which that's what I wanted in order to continue my dreams for a higher level of advanced studies on economics, my career,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I do now for the past 22 years. So before that, that job that I got in New York in the United Nations, I work as a professor in several colleges in New York, and also in Peru. I taught at the master's level um, for the students of masters in administration. Uh, I taught economics,
Mm-hmm.
macroeconomics. Um, Now, if I had to do the second part of your question is very interesting because if I had to do it again, um, I will try to probably to get more plans uh, before spontaneity. I did a lot of spontaneity because I had to so many um, balls to juggle sometimes when between the 20 and 25. Um, but yeah, that I would plan a little bit more ahead. You know, I did like I do like to plan, but in Peru there's a lot of issues going on. Economics. I was not coming from parents who have economic security, um, so also I was the first one in my I'm still the first one of my family, of my brothers and sisters, so I had more responsibilities to do. I had to learn to cook at 12 or 14 years old, cook for my brothers and sisters, and then besides studying, I had to carry water between 6 years old until 10 years old in a place called Chimbote before we arrived to the capital in Lima, uh, because there was no water, no sanitation in my place. So we had to have my daddy, who had to carry much heavier containers of water, but still my brother and myself, twins, had to carry that water like 5 blocks from our home every morning before going to school.
Whoa.
And so I think in a way, and at this stage, working for this organization, it was a training actually. Instead of just until I arrived here, I was still struggling to do my master's and PhD in economics, and until 10 years ago, I didn't understand that that was just a preparation. That was a training. It's like a boot camp all my life. Uh, since I was a baby, when my parents and my grandmother said that I was several times in risk of dying for diseases that in developing countries are pretty often, where like stomach, digestive systems or respiratory things that poor people get them more often. So I think there was a preparation because I got sturdy and more resilient. I wouldn't recommend anybody to get to that process to get to where I am. I think it robbed many years of my life to get through those. It was a preparation and training, and I had that satisfaction right now. But at the same time, why a human being has to get through those processes to arrive what they like to do, or their talents they could develop much smoother, right? So yeah.
So there are many types of way to educate yourself or to become more educated, such as word of mouth or orally. Then you have school, which would be more of a formal type of education. What type of education did you have primarily when you were growing up?
Well, I had first was the oral education from my mother and my father. They had a lot of tons of storytelling from the jungle, from the Andes, from any place, from brothers, from their brothers, my uncles, my aunts, from my grandmother's stories. So it's full of stories. My first education, and through those stories, since are life stories, they are real stories where you learn how to solve issues, how they solve the moments, how they celebrated moments, how they pass their sadness, and so all those things brings you. It's like a teachings from your parents without themselves expressly thinking that they're educating you. Actually, they are passing that culture and that ways of solving things and how to face problems, how to have a view of the problems more positive still to continue improving. It sounds like
That's
probably
amazing.
you know that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had something like that.
It's the first time when I arrived here in this country 32 years ago that I found the word depression, that people get depressed. I didn't know what does mean that word.
Whoa.
Really?
That's
No,
crazy.
I'm serious. I'm not exaggerating. Depression, say, what does it mean? Still, I have problems to understand. But now I understand better that people, why they get depressed. But there was no time for depression for us. It was always ways to create, to solve problems. You know what I mean? Especially as a first son, you have the responsibility to, when you take care of your brothers or sisters, or you are going to cook later, well, that is problem solving. I have several anecdotes that my parents had to go away because they lost their money or something. They went to look for in the place they think they lost it. And I was with my brother and sister in a place of my grandfather's in a little house in a little town, and not having money, and 15 years old, and not knowing where we are going to feed each other, because we knew that in our parents would be probably all day outside, and I was with four brothers and sisters. So what I saw is like I said, our grandfather, once I saw him that he saves potatoes in sacks, and in the same room where he sleeps, but in the upper part, so the mice would not enter so easily. Okay, and also I noticed outside still he cultivated corn. So I say, okay, we can do something. I can do something. And I never also, at 15 years old, never tried cooking from with wood, in a pot that was my grandfather. They just went in emergency to look for that money they lost, dropping it. So before somebody takes it, So then they just left us, to be there. So I did solve it, and it was a good soup, because when they come back, my mother tried it and she said, "It's delicious."
Have you ever cooked prior to that?
I did, because I was already 15, and I started to do my first tryings at 12, but at 14 was official. My
Mhm.
mother used to started to work outside home, and then say, okay, you're going to buy the groceries today. This is this. Let's make a list, and then you're going to cook. Huh?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, man. And then you can come outside just to play or to swim or something. Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to point something out too, like as you were telling your story, especially like when it came to depression and how that was like surprising to you at first. I think it's because, and I can relate to this because, I've been in a third world country. I think that's the case because, w- we've seen the other side and we're so grateful for what we have now, especially like with education.
Right.
Like if I were back in my home country, education would have been a lot harder. There are colleges. There is an educational system. Is it the best? Maybe not.
Mm.
But like being here opened up opportunities where I could learn in non-traditional ways,
Mhm.
where I could find mentors both in person and online, and learn and invest in myself differently, and think differently.
Right.
Um, and I think we shouldn't take education for granted
No.
ever.
Especially public education. So.
Public education is great here. It's not nothing is perfect, but it's like
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah. One of the difference, for example, that I noticed when I just arrived here, and the poor people, they can also go to public college,
Mhm.
public schools in general, primary, secondary, and but they always have books in the libraries, in the
Yeah,
schools.
a lot of them.
All the time, the problem for parents in Peru was that they didn't have enough money to buy all the books and all the notebooks and all the pencils that they needed.
Mm.
So what happens is that in the school, the kids steal each other, steal their books, but pens it was more often, because with pens or pencils, is somehow the teacher would not be just all day would be just discussing about that, who did it, who still.
Mm.
But the books is much more difficult because they have to use the book, they cannot just hide it, right? The pencil you can give to another friend or brothers or sister in a different school or in a different room or something. You can make it appear that it's a different if you just
Yeah.
do something to the pencil or something, right?
Yeah.
But everything the parents have to respond with it. And our desk with my twin brother, my parents did it, because otherwise we were sitting in on bricks. I'm not kidding. That's first year of primary school. Second, the first year is transition. It's not really first, yeah. It's like kindergarten, but they call it transition. Then they come the first year, second year. So my parents had to buy in the first year, in when we changed the school to the second year, also buy the desk, and I mean to get the carpenter basically to make one desk for both of us, for my brother and myself.
Mm.
So you have to put, your parents are active members for you to study, not only feeding you, but also actually buying all the materials you need to study. And still, we didn't have the first years of my primary school, the first 2-3 years, we didn't have electricity. We had to use candles.
Candles. Yeah, I
When I
remember that.
just say this thing, and at this very moment, I feel like, am I inventing that thing? No, it was true.
So
It looked more
Alex,
normal in Peru to say that story, but not here.
so Alex, you growing up in Peru, you didn't have a lot of amenities. You didn't have a lot of formal education tools. And even though you had those hardships, you were able to use you and your parents, your resourcefulness, to still gain as much as you could from the situation you were in. And now you're here in the US as a member of the UN. So it's not necessarily about what you don't have, it's about what you do with what you do have.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it is it's the philosophy also, the parents and the indigenous people and all the people who are migrants also. When you are a migrant, you know, believe it or not, you know why you're leaving. So it's a huge step, it's a huge leap, but we are very conscious why we are doing it that day. So we are not going with a big risk, but at the same time, we would put day and night of work and focus to make it happen. So to teach this kid, for example, to teach your kids to go forward. So it's a philosophy. So you get inspired by that philosophy, but not only because they're teaching you that philosophy. They don't teach you that philosophy. They teach you by doing it, by example. So it's because they're doing every day. They wake up your parents at 5 o'clock in the morning. They go back at 11 o'clock p.m. And still the mother is asking how is going your school, and they still are managing juggling different balls. So you don't have time, and you don't have this culture even from their grandparents, because this doesn't start with our parents. Our grandparents also, we know the histories, oral histories, how they made it. That's it. My grandmother from my mother's side got became widow when she was 45 and with 6 kids.
Wow.
And all of that 6 kids had to migrate with my grandmother to different places because it was difficult to stay in one place until she was expelled to the street. So there was families first, friends, and then all of them, they got tired because there are 6 kids. They have to eat, they have to place and sleep. So they give you, family give you temporarily, but not forever, right? So this kind of a braveness, this kind of a mystic desire for getting better, or what I would call in the language of the UN, freedom from want. So freedom from hunger, to look for freedom from hunger, not freedom of conscience, but freedom from hunger. That is a big, big, deep desire of a migrant, for example, because they don't accept defeat. They say, we are not going to die of hunger here. Well, it happened in the US also. Several migrations that have been from the south to the north, or from the east to the west. And so that's where the ethic of the migrant comes. It comes from parents, grandparents, and family relations, and those are I can respond to you.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. I relate to some of it, not all of it, because obviously I'm from a different generation.
Sure.
But I related, like when you said that you had to study, just using candles, and that's all you had because there was an outage. Like I still remember those moments.
Right.
And now I have a computer. There's always electricity. There's water.
Right.
It's amazing. Like I still connect with that feeling, and it's a very strong, powerful type of gratitude because it's so basic.
Yeah.
And it's a strong motivation.
It's easy to think about what you don't have in life.
Yeah.
And be like, woe is me, like, oh, I don't have a parent around in life, or my girlfriend left me, or I'm not going to the greatest of schools, or my teachers aren't helping me much. And that's not what's gonna drive you forward towards success or towards improvement. What's gonna drive you forward towards improvement is figuring out what you can do to achieve what you want.
Right.
And realize that things could be worse, but they're not, and that's a blessing.
And depression is really just focusing on what you don't have, what you're missing, or what you've lost.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's also, one of my coaches told me, it's not having something to look forward to. And it's so funny because before this podcast, Dawn and I were talking about it, and then you brought it up, and here we are all discussing it. I think it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
It's like not having something to look forward to, or not focusing on the good.
And another thing, when I arrived also, I realized that there was a lot of poor people in New York, for example. They were living close to a big park, public park. And I said, why they don't use it more often? Well, I realized little by little that many of them are working. But on the days that they don't work, or at least for a moment, why they don't do some sports? It's lucky to be in Lima. In Lima is the capital. It's worse, the state of the provinces in Peru. But you are lucky if in Lima, living in Lima, you live near a park. So when I saw here, any neighborhood a park, it doesn't matter. It's better, of course, in a rich neighborhood in Manhattan or something. But still, there is a park in any place in Brooklyn. And I say, why the people are smoking,
Mm.
or why they are smoking, drugs? But why is it? I couldn't understand. And so I saw this wealth of opportunity here, in the sense that all the infrastructure, basic infrastructure, is there. But I think it comes actually from the parents too, also
Oh, yeah.
from the family, and also the philosophy of education. The education, it complements what is happening in the family here. The family is very individual. You have to buy your own. You have to help yourself, and it's great to give that power, but at the same time, I think they don't transmit the way you, your parents probably became professionals,
Mm-hmm.
with also some support of their colleagues or the libraries or something.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, I did this because I am smart and I did this. Actually, yes, it was part, but part was what you had around already. Your some memory of family, was more successful. And you look at that person as a role model. It's,
Mm.
it's helpful.
So you're saying it's like the culture and your family is part of what motivates you to get educated.
Yeah, no, definitely. My parents did all these moves from different places. When I tell friends, they say I have two sisters from different places in Peru that were born, and I was born also with my brother in a different town, and my other two brothers also were born in different places. They say, so you have different parents, right? No, it's the same parent. Just they were looking for better schools or better jobs.
Mm.
That's all why they moved. So then kind of was a preparation, because later, even though they never visited a foreign country, I never was lucky to go to a different country because my parents took me or something.
Mm.
I was just really prepared mentally, and now with my education and the money I saved in
Mm.
Peru with my job after the MBA, I'm ready 10 years ago, so to go to do my advanced studies on economics.
Nice. Congrats.
I did that, and then for the UN also was the same thing, because but then how you get the UN job? That's difficult. Everybody, you travel around the world, and they all say, "Are you working at the UN? You must be working for the Peruvian mission." I said, "No, maybe you're working something related with your government." No, I said, "Are you working for the same UN in New York?" Yes. I said, And I think it's also another part of the story. Once you get the accomplishment little by little, you made the accomplishment and get bigger and bigger. And then also there is a sort of lack, in the sense when you did your job or doing your own efforts, I think comes lack. Okay, lack just come on as a ice on the cake. You see what I mean? Yeah. For example, one example. When I was admitted to study in New York, I was just happy that I'm going to do my advanced studies in economics, okay, masters and PhD. Yeah, I was happy because I was 10 years. I told you I was waiting for that moment. That improving my English, getting into the MBA, getting good jobs, and all this stuff. For 9 years, 9 or 10 years. I applied and I was accepted, and I said, "Wow, great!" I told my friend who was a professor in MBA school, and he said, "Oh, let me see the address." Because for me the address didn't mean nothing. It just was the U.S. and was going to start advanced studies. That's all I care. Okay? And the school that I really wanted, in New York. He said, "Oh, you're going to be in the center of New York." Whatever he told me for half an hour, I was just listening to him, but it didn't mean much to me. He told me, "You're going to be near the concerts, near the theaters, all these things that you love it." I love it just as an aficionado, but whatever he was telling me, didn't mean much if it was the university was going to was going to be, by chance, would have been placed in Buffalo,
Mm.
in New York, I would have gone. Still as the same with the same happiness.
Mm. So,
Luck was that when I arrived here and I saw that I was in Brooklyn and the university was just 20 minutes from where
it's
I
awesome.
was, really 20 minutes from Manhattan,
Mm.
you know? And I say, really? This is the New York, the famous island. It was just all luck. Because as I said, I was going to be this with the same level of happiness. If this would have been in Buffalo or any little town, you know, King would be still equally happy. Because I wanted my studies to continue at the highest level in my career. That's what in my profession I wanted to get to the top, the PhD. That's what I got the PhD idea when I was 19. I read a book by one of the big brains, Nobel Prize in economics, Paul Samuelson,
Mhm.
and big thick book that every student of first years of economics, and this is a big Bible, right? And I noticed that he had 24, 25 years old, he finished his PhD in MIT. And I said, wow, PhD in economics. And he wrote this book, basically the Bible economics, macroeconomics. I began to dream, at 19,
Nice.
and I was the first student in my class, I liked the economics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I began to dream, 18, 19, that's it.
Yeah, and the book like kind of helped you.
Yeah, the book,
Yeah.
because it said there his biography. He was so I wanted to be also a doctor
Oh.
at 25, and not. I was only able to travel here when I was 30, late, but still it was following my dream, or whatever it cost me. And then the UN also was not easy to get inside, and then to get a secure job. For years I have worked in an insecure job inside the UN. So it was 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, but I knew that this was just a ice of the cake, because I was expected. I was not a son from a diplomat or an engineer, from a doctor. You know, I just they made me. They helped me to dream big. That's what they did, but not any background that they were. My father was ambulance driver from a hospital. That's
Mm.
all he could. He couldn't finish primary school. But one thing he had clear, he never would abandon his kids. Yeah, one. Second, he would give them the best education he couldn't. You know?
So I think we should start to wrap it up around here. Before we go, Alex, is there anything or any advice you would give to students in high school or their early years of college to help get them through it?
Right. Um, the best advice is, first, listen to your parents when they give you advice. And the parents, when they give advice, they shouldn't give advice like you must do this. It
Mm.
should be always open. It's advice is advice. It means that you may take it, you may not take it. So
Just be sure to listen to it
yeah,
and keep an open mind.
listen and leave a space for the
Wow.
kids to decide. That's very important.
I like that.
Very, very important. Once you put a restriction or obligation, they will not do it, because they want to express themselves. When you are young, you have so much your brain developing and so much ideas you have, you know. And then my father never told me you have to finish your studies, or you have to be economist. Nothing. Or you have to be a lawyer or a doctor, better, because then we get healthier stuff. No, it's just supporting whatever I want to study English. Okay, let's let's give them money for him for his studies on English, special studies at 18, 19. So that's the best advice. Listen to your parents, listen to your professors, to your best teachers that you have. Always see that in your family, if it's not your parents, somebody who is a role model. Follow that. Visit that person. Try to see how he did it, she did it. That's the first thing. I think if I would be a minister, a minister or something, or education or something, first thing I would do for the poor kids, all the role models in sports, in different careers, I will I will create a fund, and from the minister with the money of the people, and that this like the lawyers also have the obligation to have pro bono for poor people to assist without charging so much money. The same thing with the best professionals of the country that they visit. They do also visit to the schools. They give these advices, classes to in those poor neighborhoods. They need to role models. When you don't have role models and you see all what it is, you fall down. More risk that you fall down. You know, so we need the role models at the executive level of government. That's what we need. You know, that they're working part of their work of being serving to the community, to your country. Be, you know, be part of your year work. Be some hours working with them, with the young kids. That's Thank you.
This was great.
Do you have any questions for Alex, Ian, before we wrap this up?
No questions, just comments. Like a lot of wisdom, a lot of good points about gratitude, finding role models or mentors,
Paying attention and keeping an open mind.
keeping an open mind, using the resources that are in front of you, looking at the positive as much as possible. And I think those are the main points. And yeah, guys, great episode. Thanks again for your time. Thank you, Dalton, for being here with me as always. And see you guys
Thank you,
next
Dalton. Thank you, Ian.
Of course,
Yeah,
Alex,
got it.
thank you for coming today with us. Really, like Ian said, great stories. Helped me broaden my perspective a little bit, which I appreciate.
Oh, thank you.
You know, like I was saying before, it's easy to think about what you don't have, and then when you go around talking to people, even like role models, you're listening to your teachers or other peers, and you listen to their stories, you start to see that what you have isn't that bad, and people have gone through and prevailed through worse times and worse circumstances. So if it's possible for them, then it's definitely possible for you.
Right.
And with that, I want to thank you guys for joining us today on the Self Improvement Podcast, and we'll see you guys next week.